Hi, everyone. This is Lawrence Watkins, and welcome to the Financial Juneteenth 5. These are my 5 favorite articles as it relates to Black finance, wealth, and business for today, October 28th, 2020. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. So the first article today comes from the New York Times, and it states PayPal invests in racial equality. The company is putting $50 million in Black and Latino led venture capital firms. So PayPal will invest more than $50 million in 8 Black and Latino led venture capital firms. Chingona Ventures, Fearless Fund, Harlem Capital, Precursor, Slauson and Company, Vamos Ventures, Zeal Capital Partners, and one fund yet to be named. It follows millions in grants that PayPal has given to Black owned businesses affected by the pandemic or protests, and Optimus Bank, a Black focused lender, as well. There's a quote in here from Dan Schulman, who is PayPal CEO. It states, "So little venture money goes into minority communities. This is a way to think about how we start to create how we start to create wealth creation." PayPal is hoping that other businesses will follow their lead and invest more in Black owned VCs and directly into Black owned businesses. As many companies agonize over wading into politics and social movements, Mr. Schulman said that he believed companies have a moral obligation to act. Values that are just on a wall are just propaganda and are worse than having no values at all, he said. "I don't think that we can stand aside and hope that the problems of our society are just addressed by governments and nonprofits." So shout out to PayPal for making this specific investment, and hopefully the Black and Latino led VC firms that you invested in will do a great job of choosing the right companies to actually invest. This actually leads me to my next article. And my next article comes directly from the Wharton School of Business. So maybe like 5 or 6 days ago, they had a panel discussion with two individuals. The title of the article is "Building a Bigger Tent: How VCs Can Support Black Founders." And this was a discussion with Erica James, who is a Black woman who is now the dean of the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, which is widely considered one of the 3 to 5 best business schools in the country. With Chris, what's Chris' last name? Chris Bennett, and also another partner, a white man by the name of Joshua Kopelman, who is a partner of First Round Capital. And Chris Bennett is a Black entrepreneur as well. So, with the spotlight shining brightly this year on social justice and racial inequity, Black entrepreneurs are having a moment. But will that moment last long enough to transform the venture capital industry, which currently invests in startups with Black founders at a rate of less than 1%? Josh Kopelman, who, as I mentioned before, is a Wharton grad, and also a partner at First Round Capital, which is a well-known seed stage venture fund. He says in the interview, "I think when it comes to racial equity, the venture industry has been a laggard and not a leader. These issues are important and they should be acknowledged and discussed, and VCs shouldn't hide from the conversation. As systemic racism has come into the spotlight, venture firms have all realized they need to do more." Chris Bennett, who is, like I said, is an entrepreneur. He runs a company called Wonder School, which is a company that helps licensed educators and child care providers launch in-home preschools and daycares, as well. Wonder School has raised a total of $24 million in just 2 years, following its launch in 2016. And let's see. So the article gives a little bit of background into Chris Bennett's story. So he started out selling textbooks, reselling textbooks while he was a student at Wharton. And then he went to work at a private equity firm in Chicago before he started his first company in Silicon Valley called Soldsea, which was like an e-commerce platform built upon Facebook. In 2011, he started a nonprofit called Black Founders to network with others like him because of the experience of being a Black founder was so singular. In this interview, Chris is quoted by saying, "I remember it being sort of a radical idea. Why are you self segregating? Now I think it would be widely accepted, which is sort of exciting. The thinking in the community is starting to change, and that's largely because of what's happening across the nation." The interview at Wharton between these three individuals also brought up the challenge of bias and privilege. Bias is a big part of why it's so hard for Black entrepreneurs to get in front of investors. James pointed to research that has shown people are more likely to seek out others who look and sound like themselves and who come from similar backgrounds. For investors who are overwhelmingly white men, there is a level of discomfort with the familiar and a perceived risk of the unknown. So they went deeper into that particular conversation. But to end the interview, I wanted to share a quote by Kopelman in terms of his prescriptive way in terms of hiring and building the team. Kopelman's prescriptive of making the hire, sending the wire, and building a bigger tent is totally spot on. It's a really simple, or excuse me, he then states it's really simple. Invest in people of color, hire more people of color, invest in the careers of people of color. He said that has a really long lasting effect, and I think will play a big role in changing the narrative that exists in the tech community today. So, if you are in the VC space and the tech space and want to know what two leaders are thinking about the particular industry right now, highly recommend that you checking out this hour-long interview between the three of them. I think that you will get a lot out. You would get a lot out of it. The next article today comes from The Root. And it states the title states "Built to Last." American Express and Elaine Welter. I actually don't know how to say her name. Welteroth launch a vodcast to celebrate Black-owned small businesses. By the next time we do FCT 5, I will know how to pronounce this young lady's name. So, a new video podcast series by American Express aims to do exactly that. Built to Last, hosted by New York Times bestselling author, journalist, producer, and former editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue, Elaine Welteroth. The series, which launched Tuesday, aims to dive into the stories, history, and continued legacy of small businesses that shape American culture. As American Express tells us, it's an extension of its longstanding commitment to backing small and minority-owned businesses. The podcast features in-depth interviews with Black-owned small business owners who are thriving despite the challenges they face. Each episode honors the trailblazing Black entrepreneurs that paved the way for the business leaders of today. These conversations uncover and celebrate the stories, past and present, of Black entrepreneurship in America and seek to inspire listeners to support Black-owned small businesses in their communities. Let's see. The premiere episode features Pinky Cole, CEO and founder of Atlanta's Slutty Vegan, the wildly successful plant-based burger chain, which opened its third brick-and-mortar location last weekend in the Edgewood area of the city, a remarkable feat amid a pandemic that has proven devastating to both Black-owned businesses and the restaurant industry alike. So I think there's one last quote that I wanted to share in here. Yes, so new episodes will be available approximately weekly beginning October 27th, which was yesterday, through December 8th, each featuring more in-depth interviews with Black-owned small business owners, including Issa Rae, Hannah Diop of Sienna Naturals, Coriana and Brianna Dotson of Coco and Breezy, and many, many additional companies. So check out it on, I believe it's in Spotify. It's also on iTunes, and the American Express YouTube channel has these interviews listed. So please make sure you check it out. And the link to the article is in the description as well. The fourth article is really an interview, and this is a site that I've never heard of. I believe it's a UK United Kingdom based site. But the title of the article is "The Zine Talks to a Vibe Called Tech About Racism and Technology." I just like that name. So I thought this would be an interesting article to share, an interview to share. But the article states exposing and tackling racism in technology is the goal of UK initiative, A Vibe Called Tech. The zine spoke to co-founder Charlene Primpa about the responsibility companies have in protecting the Black community on and offline. Launched in 2018, A Vibe Called Tech explores the impact that technology has on Black people in the UK. Primpa Primpa's work spans across the various forms that technology takes, from social media platforms to artificial intelligence and biometric devices. She has some, interesting quotes. She seems like someone who is very straightforward in terms of her thoughts and what she believes. Primpa told Dezine, "The ways in which tech is used as a tool of oppression are numerous. We often talk about it like it's new, but technology's been coming for Black people since the beginning. Even when you look back to the start of photography in certain lights or with a flash on, you couldn't get a Black face. There has always been this sense that Black people aren't being considered when technology is developed, and that has just persisted." All right, there's a quote in here. A 2018 MIT study, for instance, found that commercial gender recognition systems misclassify darker skinned females at rates of up to 34%, while error rates among lighter skinned males are around 0.8%. So this article and this interview really gets into systemic racism, even as it relates to technology and how technology is developed. Since most technology is developed by white men who have these jobs working in these corporations, there seems to be an inherent bias in terms of what computers and what the AI systems and algorithms can pick up and what they can't pick up as well. But yeah, I highly recommend that you check out this article in the zine. I'll make sure to check out more from this publication moving forward as well. All right. So the last article today comes from the Denver Post. It states Denver's first Black owned gun club opens as more African Americans buy firearms amid pandemic and racial tension. So, the 1770 Armory and Gun Club is Colorado's first Black-owned gun club, and it opened its doors last week as Black people increasingly are arming themselves amid a pandemic and racial division within the United States. So, I believe the club was started by an Aurora church pastor. Her name is Wanda James, and she's the gun club's co-owner. Given the place in which we are in America, politically, racially, African Americans don't feel safe anymore, Wanda stated. It's sad. It's a sad scenario when people don't feel comfortable in their homes, walking down the street, or in their cars. I found this next stat to be very interesting. In the first 6 months of 2020, a record 10.3 million firearm transactions were processed by U.S. retailers, according to a report from the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Among those sales, the highest overall increase in purchases were among Black men and women, who bought 58.2% more guns in the first half of 2020 when compared with the same period in 2019. Overall, Black men made up 9.3% of all firearm sales, while Black women accounted for 5.4% during the period. Still, though, Black people are less likely to own guns than white people. In 2017, about a quarter of Black Americans owned firearms, while 36% of white people own firearms, according to a Pew Research study. The article then talks quite a bit about this idea of protecting the family. The owners chose 5 points. That's a neighborhood in Denver. The owners chose 5 points so the new gun range would be affordable and accessible to people in Denver. And while the neighborhood is undergoing considerable change through new development, lead instructor Master Young said, "I want people to know that in the community, or in the middle of this reconstruction, there are still Black-owned businesses in the community. The owners chose the name 1770 after the year of the American Revolution started and the year Crispus Attucks, a black man who is widely considered the first American to die in the Revolution, was killed. So shout out to this gun range. Um, yeah, and well, the article then talks about how or why black men in particular have been not really buying firearms in the past because of association with street gangs, and also fears of run-ins with the police as well. So shout out to the 1770 gun range for the work that they're doing. We love to see black-owned businesses in all facets and all spaces as well. So that's it. Those are my 5 favorite articles as it relates to Black finance, wealth, and business for today, October 28th, 2020. Let me know your thoughts about these articles in the comments. Also, let me know what you think about the FJT5 segment in general. Is this something that you would like for us to continue on? We have about 2 or 3 more weeks of doing this test run. If you all like it, we'll continue. If not, we'll go in a different direction. Before you get out of here, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the Financial Juneteenth channel. On behalf of Financial Juneteenth, my name is Lawrence Watkins. Take care, be blessed, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Today's video is brought to you by the Black Business School. At the Black Business School, we don't help you just climb the corporate ladder, we help you build your own as well. We provide a culturally relevant yet practical education in all things wealth building at an affordable price. So no matter if you want additional freedom in your day-to-day life, you would like to leave a legacy of generational wealth behind to your family and friends, or you just want additional security and stability going into your golden years of retirement, the Black Business School has courses and offerings for you. So head over to theblackbusinessschool.com to learn more. Take care and see you in class soon. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and welcome to Financial Juneteenth TV. I want to talk to you guys about something called a SPAC, or a Special Purpose Acquisition Company. SPACs are basically this new way of investing that has gotten a lot of people excited. SPACs benefit both investors and those seeking to exit their companies and get a good return on capital. To read some of the definition, a special purpose acquisition company is a blank check shell corporation designed to take companies public without going through the traditional IPO process. Though SPACs have been around for decades, the financial maneuver has gained traction recently as more private companies are trying to figure out exit opportunities, and also as the COVID-19 pandemic creates uncertainty in the IPO market. In fact, in the first 9 months of 2020, U.S. SPACs raised $41.7 billion. That's 44% of all public offerings, according to the Financial Times. Right now, SPACs are a pretty attractive investment. The target company is able to go public pretty quickly without much of the volatility that's associated with traditional IPOs. And also investors get access to high reward investments with limited risk. So SPACs have been used quite a bit recently. Lordstown Motors is probably the most popular SPAC as of late. Their company just went public and did extremely well. So everybody's talking about it. So just know that the IPO isn't the only way to enter into the market. It looks like the SPAC, the Special Purpose Acquisition Company, is becoming very popular. If you'd like to learn more about investing and dig deeper into these things, make sure you subscribe to this channel. And also, if you haven't learned to buy your first share of stock, or you just want to get free information from the Black Business School, go to firstshareofstock.com. That's firstshareofstock.com. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins. I'm a finance PhD, and I care about you, and I want you to do well financially. This is a short little segment here, and I hope this helps you. So please feel free to leave comments below and ask any questions or leave any remarks. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Lawrence Watkins, and welcome to the Financial Juneteenth 5. These are my 5 favorite articles as it relates to Black wealth, finance, and business for today, October 27th, 2020. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. So the first article today comes from the New York Times, and the article is entitled, "Kushner, Employing Racist Stereotype, Questions If Black Americans Want to Be Successful." In a Fox and Friends interview, President Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor also criticized protesters as more concerned with what he called virtue signaling than coming up with real solutions. So the article has a quote in here, his direct quote from Fox and Friends interview. Mr. Kushner stated, "One thing we've seen in a lot of the Black community, which is mostly Democrat, is that President Trump's policies are the policies that can help people break out of the problems that they're complaining about." Then it goes on to state, but he can't want them to be successful more than they want to be successful. So I guess that's where the questioning comes into play. There's an additional quote in here from Mr. Kushner. He states, "They'd go on Instagram and cry, or they would put a slogan on their jersey or write something on the basketball court. And quite frankly, that was doing more to polarize the country than it was to bring people forward," he said. "You solve problems with solutions." Now, of course, Donald Trump, received a lot of pushback and fire from Black Democrats and just other individuals in the United States. There are some quotes in here from the article from Gwen Moore, a Black Democrat from Wisconsin. She tweeted, "Trust fund baby slumlord Kushner, who has enriched himself in the White House, takes the silver spoon out of his mouth long enough to insert his foot with a racist trope about Black people and success." So that was an extremely funny and powerful quote. There's a more standard quote, coming from the Democratic National Committee, a man by the name of Brandon Gasaway, the National Press Secretary for the committee. Brandon states, "According to the Trump administration, when African Americans find fault in policies that have led to historic unemployment for Black families, an explosion of racial inequities and wealth gaps, and an uncontained global pandemic that has taken the lives of over 45,000 Black Americans, it means that we just don't want to be successful badly enough. This dismissive approach to the issues that Black voters care about is indicative of Trump's callousness and disregard for the lives of Black people." Let's see if there's another quote. And also, Trump, of course, over the past few weeks has claimed that he has done more as president of the United States than Abraham Lincoln for Black people and more than any other president throughout history. Leah Wright I never know how to pronounce her last name, Rigor, a professor of public policy at the Kennedy School at Harvard. She has a quote in here that says, "The idea that Trump has done something that is tremendous or different when it comes to HBCUs defies logic. It is virtually identical to what every president has done since Ronald Reagan. The executive order they issued in 2007 used the exact same language that Barack Obama used." And to end this article, there's a paragraph that I thought was very poignant. It states, and it shows in terms of, even though Donald Trump lies often, he's still gaining some traction with Black voters. Top campaign officials have said that their goal is to win at least 10% of Black voters in November, and that increasing the president's support among Black voters by as little as 2 percentage points could sway the election. In 2016, Mr. Trump won just 8% of Black voters. So this is an article today in the New York Times about Jared Kushner's remarks. In the comments, let me know what you think about what Jared Kushner said. Do you think he's right? Do you think he put his foot in his mouth? But let me know what you think about Jared Kushner and his thoughts and comments on Fox and Friends. The next article comes from marketplace.org. It is an interview, and it states, "Student loan debt adds to racial wealth disparities, research finds." And the interview is between Fanaba Ado and David Braun Kyle. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. I apologize, David. But the article opens up stating, "While the pandemic has forced some to take a break from college to reduce expenses or save money, the burden of growing student debt was an issue long before COVID, and research suggests that there is a growing racial inequality problem with student debt." And our good friend, Mr. Julian Gordon, talks about this quite often, and Boyce talks about this too, quite a bit in terms of taking our best and brightest and putting them under so much debt that they can never get out of it. And this interview really talks about that. So you can either read the interview, and I believe that you can play it directly here from marketplace.org. Fanaba Ado, she says, our research has found that Black borrowers tend to borrow the most. They tend to have higher loan balances, and they have the highest rates of default and delinquency while in repayment. She was asked, in terms of, what's happening. So basically, Black borrowers accrue more debt, and it takes them longer to pay it back because the debt lingers. And Otto says that's correct. So to attend post-secondary institutions, they are borrowing more. And of student loan borrowers who are in the repayment phase, Black borrowers tend to have longer repayment phases, while white student loan borrowers pay back their debt faster. So the disparity actually grows over time. That's actually one of the striking findings about my earliest articles that was exploring the relationship between parental wealth and debt accumulation. This is a separate point that I thought was very important. And here's the point. White young adults who went to college and took on debt, as their parental wealth increases, they took on less debt, right? We did not find any evidence to support this is the same relationship among Black borrowers. Black borrowers who came from higher net wealth households, we did not see them taking on less debt to attend college. So that's very interesting. So no matter if you grew up poor or if you grew up middle class or rich, if you're Black, you're still taking on a very similar amount of debt, compared to poorer borrowers that come from less income households. And that's not this true for white families. So the more money a white family makes, the less money and the less straddled with debt the borrower is actually going to have to be, which is the actual student. So that was the most intriguing thing that I found throughout the entire interview in terms of statistics. So Miss Miss Otto has some recommendations here. So thinking more about need-based aid, moving away from loan-based aid, but more to grants to help them pay for college so that they're not accumulating excessive amounts of debt if they don't have the resources to pay for college, in particular for people who are coming from low income and low wealth households. There was another thing in terms of thinking about the repayment part. And her solution about repayment has to do with the labor market discrimination. We want to think about labor market discrimination in particular. There's very strong evidence to suggest that Black graduates have higher rates of unemployment compared to white students without a college degree. So that is all tied to the ability to earn a living and have income that allows you to pay back those debts in a reasonable amount of time. So check this article, this full interview, or you can listen to it here from marketplace.org. The link is in the description. The third article today comes from Technically. So Technically is a news site that I've been enjoying watching, mainly in the tech space. So it covers tech type of news. It looks to be mainly on the East Coast, but I need to do a little bit more research on that. The title of the article is Employee Resource Groups Build Community in the Workplace. Here's how to make yours successful. And it's written by a staff reporter there by the name of Michael Butler. All right, the article starts talking about Mumeen Ransom, who started a Black employee network, it's a part of a Black employee network at Comcast, and I believe he is the leader of it. He has a quote in here that says, "I'm a firm believer that talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not. We often say the vision of the BEN was to give a voice to the underrepresented." And so with former Comcast colleague Justin LaRose, Ransom co-founded BE Engineers, an employee resource group for Black technologists at Comcast. So it seems like they have the BEN at Comcast and then this subgroup or another group that focus specifically on Blacks in technology at the organization. One study in 2017 showed that 66 websites of Fortune 100 firms recognized their employee resource groups. Ransom, in terms of actionable things that he's done, Ransom has found that collaborating with his employer allowed his organization to maximize his potential. An example of BE Engineers' success was the BE Engineers Conference, a February 2020 event that brought 150 Black technologists together to discuss their work. And employee resource groups are important because they provide a level of networking opportunity and connection building to advance one's career if you plan on, thriving and climbing the corporate ladder. The next part of the article follows another person by the name of Ashley Turner. Ashley is the founder of Women in Tech Resource Group at Philly Tech Sisters. And is also, she helped organize the Women of Color at Swarthmore Employee Resource Group, which is a very prestigious college, I believe, in the Philadelphia area. Turner and her colleagues also found that when many women move to Swarthmore for work, they know little to nothing about resources outside of work. To help them get more familiar, the Women of Color ERG created a guidebook with information on resources like women of color friendly doctors, hairstylists, and popular restaurants as well. And this is a picture of Ashley. She has a quote in here. She states, "It's important for us to continue to build our relationships because we're remote during this time," she said, "especially because so many people are going through things with childcare, elder care, and having to work from home. People not only have K-12 students, but other people to support as well." She had some good recommendations. So I recommend that you read this article in full from technically.com, especially if you work in corporate and you would like to extend your company's ERG, or if they don't have an ERG for Black employees, going about establishing one. This article may be of good resource to you. All right. The next article comes from Next City, so nextcity.org. And I read the entire interview, but I really wanted to focus on these first couple of paragraphs. And I'm going to try my hardest to get Thomas Mitchell as a guest on Financial Juneteenth. The article is entitled Thomas W. Mitchell, MacArthur Genius Grantee on Black Land Ownership. And I'm just going to, it's kind of long in terms of the paragraph, but I think it's so important in terms of systemic racism as it relates to land and how rural land was lost by Black property holders throughout the years. And so I'm just going to read it and then we'll move on to the next article. But I highly recommend that you read the entire interview, and I'll do my best to get Thomas Mitchell on the Financial Juneteenth channel as well. Between the end of the Civil War in 1910, Black landowners came into possession of some 15 million acres of rural land in the American South, according to research published by Thomas W. Mitchell, now a professor at Texas A&M University School of Law. But by the end of the 20th century, their holdings had shrunk to just around 2 million acres. One reason for the massive loss of Black land was laws governing property held in common by heirs of landowners who didn't leave wills before they died. As land passed through generations and the number of heirs grew, each heir had the chance to force a partition sale of property that would then divide the proceedings among heirs. As ProPublica and the New Yorker wrote in a story co-published last year, speculators can buy off the interest of a single heir, and just one heir or speculator, no matter how minute his share, can force the sale of an entire plot through the courts. These laws and practices have had broad implications for Black land ownership and wealth creation in the United States. Mitchell has spent 2 decades researching the legal causes of Black land loss and helped to design a law that gives groups of heirs a better chance of preserving ownership of their property if they choose to do so. Among other provisions, the law gives heirs the right of first refusal to buy out another heir's ownership when they are seeking a partition sale. So this interview is extremely insightful and gives some really clear answers, and also, I guess, theories in regards to Black land ownership and the impacts that it has actually had on the Black community. So please check that out in nextcity.org. All right. So the last article today comes from Seeking Alpha. And seekingalpha.com is one of those really, really financial websites. The emotion is usually not there. They talk specifically about, just the numbers of particular stocks and how they should be valued, that type of thing. And this article is entitled Urban One, the most undervalued Black-owned stock in America. So Urban One is America's largest Black-owned media company with just an $80 million market cap. The company generated over $387 million in revenue in the last 12 months, making Urban one of the most undervalued stocks on the NASDAQ. So here it has, let's see, they included their P&L statement in terms of where they're getting their revenue. So it looks like 3 months ended on June 30th. So basically the last 3 months, or I guess what's that, May, June, or April, May, and June. So Q2. Last year in 2019, they did $121 million. And this year they only did $76 million because they are down 37%, due to COVID as well. And it seems like due to political advertising, this has been one of the ways that Donald Trump has really tried to get his message out in regards to the Platinum Plan. And this article is talking about the Platinum Plan as a reason why the stock price should, potentially be higher, but then it's also a potential risk as well. The article states, Black-owned businesses have suffered historically in terms of attracting major advertisers to its network. The fact that Trump proposed such a robust economic plan shows there is a lot of much needed progress. Urban One's website network, One Digital, receives 24 million visitors per month, along with over 1 billion video impressions. Urban One's segment, TV One, reaches 59 million households, and its radio segment, Radio One, attracts 15 million weekly listeners. I don't necessarily agree with, I guess, this article. I try to, keep my opinions out of, delivering the news. But looking at this article, I do agree that Urban One may be undervalued. But the author putting so much stock into, the Platinum Plan and, $500 billion economic plan, that type of thing, I just don't necessarily agree with in terms of that actually ever coming to fruition. But anyway, I digress. Let me get back to the article. And also, this is another thing that personally I don't like about Urban One, but it is a source of revenue that we should talk about as well. One of the least talked about aspects of Urban One is its increased exposure to the gambling industry. The company invested $40 million in MGM National Harbor, a casino that serves a disproportionately African American audience. So, of course, at the Black Business School of Financial Juneteenth, we want our people to be wise with their money, and, putting liquor stores and, casinos and that type of thing where, these things are wealth extractors out of the community is something that I don't personally agree with. But this shows the power of capitalism. And also, it all really depends on who your leadership is when you're, actually running an organization. But they also recently, Urban One recently released the One VIP card, creates a new fintech revenue stream. In an effort to diversify its revenue stream, Urban One recently launched the One VIP card to serve the African American community. The One VIP card is the first ever financial solution targeted towards Black Americans. It gives some of the details. The only catch is $4.95 per month. But One VIP will credit $10 in every account if the cardholder uses the card for more than 3 months and keeps a positive balance. So no minimum balance or overdraft fees, earn up to 1.5% cash back on purchases, and fast direct deposit and simple money transfers as well. Let's see. So the conclusion, though, of the article is Urban One stock is grossly undervalued despite soaring to $50 per share during the Juneteenth stock market bubble. So yeah, go ahead and buy some Urban One if you believe in their mission, or if you want to take a more analytical approach and want to invest in undervalued stocks. But this comes from seekingalpha.com, and it's about Urban One being very undervalued. So that's about it. Those are my top 5 favorite articles for today, October 27th, 2020. Please let me know what you thought about the articles in the comments. And also let me know what you think about this FJT5 segment. Would you like for us to continue it? I believe we have about 2.5 more weeks on the trial. And if you all like it, we'll continue with the segment. If you don't, we'll go another direction and try something else. But please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe before you get out of here. On behalf of Financial Juneteenth, my name is Lawrence Watkins. You all take care, be blessed, and have a wonderful day. All right, bye-bye. Today's video is brought to you by the Black Business School. At the Black Business School, we don't help you just climb the corporate ladder, we help you build your own as well. We provide a culturally relevant yet practical education in all things wealth building at an affordable price. So no matter if you want additional freedom in your day-to-day life, you would like to leave a legacy of generational wealth behind to your family and friends, or you just want additional security and stability going into your golden years of retirement, the Black Business School has courses and offerings for you. So head over to theblackbusinessschool.com to learn more. Take care and see you in class soon. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. This is Lawrence Watkins, and welcome to the Financial Juneteenth 5. These are my 5 favorite articles as it relates to Black finance, wealth, and business for today, October 26, 2020. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. So our lead story of the day comes from the Washington Monthly. So that's the WashingtonMonthly.com. And it states, reporters of color are declaring their independence. A new crop of outlets is making journalism more diverse. And it's by a woman by the name of Ann Kim. And the article talks about just the numbers over the last 50 years. So the article starts off with setting the scene of a typical newsroom back in 1968, the last time that we had extreme racial and civil unrest. So it says 1968 and 1967. The media report and from this standpoint was from a white man's world. What was especially appalling, the article states, the commission found, they had a commission to talk about diversity in the newsroom, was the dearth of Black journalists in U.S. newsrooms across the country. Fewer than 5% of newsroom staff were Black, fewer than 1% were editors. The journalistic profession has been shockingly backward in seeking out hiring, training, and promoting of Negroes, the commission concluded. And now the writer, Ann Kim, she just juxtaposes this to what we're seeing today. And here's the interesting stat. It states, overall, newsrooms are only about half as diverse as the U.S. workforce as a whole. So although gains have been made over the past 50 years, it's still not completely equitable in terms of what gets covered and by whom as well. And we see this over and over again in terms of just how Black news stories are covered. And writes here, champions of media diversity have stopped waiting for the establishment to fix itself. Instead, a new crop of reformers is staging its own insurgency, working outside of traditional media and often in spite of it. There's a quote here from Angela Ford, who is the founder of the Black media startup Obsidian, the Obsidian Collection. And she states, I don't know that we can integrate fairly at this point. It's time for the world to hear the Black voice from a Black filter. And this is interesting because that's one of the reasons why Financial Juneteenth exists. Of course, Boyce and myself have been in this space for many, many years before it was kind of cool to be the Black kid on the block or whatever. But I'm glad that more and more media outlets are starting to follow this path of independence instead of completely and always relying on white media outlets to tell our stories. But back to the article, the result is a small but already flourishing ecosystem of nonprofits, philanthropic efforts, and media startups led largely by people of color. The article mentions one of our current partners that we have something really special coming out, in the next, I guess, couple of months with Dr. Watkins' Push Black. But there's Push Black, Obsidian, and others that have been on the rise. The article states both of these outlets have the the financial backing of the Racial Equity in Journalism Fund, the RAJ Fund, an ambitious project recently launched by the Ford Foundation and other partners to grow and sustain an emerging sector of equitable media. So it's still not completely in the space that we're in terms of being fully black and fully independent. But I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. Their goal is to challenge traditional media, to compete against it, and ultimately to transform an industry that has been far too reluctant to change. Talking about organizations like Push Black and others. And Kim then goes to talk a little bit more about just basic problems in the industry. So one of the basic problems is that we don't actually know the share of U.S. journalists in U.S. newsrooms across the country in terms of how many are people of color and more specifically Black. Something else they mentioned below as well as another problem in terms of the pipeline. Many young people of color also can't afford the luxury of an unpaid internship or the underpaid life of a freelancer, often prerequisites for scraping together enough bylines to land a full-time job. So we hear about this also in politics as well, given how little that the Capitol in the Washington establishment pays interns and junior level staffers with with politics. The same seems to be true in the media as well. There's a quote in here from Manny Ramos. He's a Chicago Sun-Times reporter. If you're Black or brown and you grew up in a low income working class community, you're starting from behind compared to a middle class white person who can rely on generational wealth while they pursue their passion career. At one point, I had an internship at a local paper. I worked full time and I went to school full time, he told me. I had no life and I was barely sleeping. A lot of people can't do that. Yeah, so this, like I said, is a very interesting article, from the Washington Monthly. You can also look at individuals like on the left, you have someone like a Roland Martin, who left network media to start his own thing on YouTube and Facebook and other outlets, and has gained a really large audience. On the right, you can look at someone like Jason Whitlock, who is one of the co-founders of Outkick the Coverage in the sports arena as well. And I'm not getting into any of their political beliefs, but I do see that no matter who you are currently, if you're Black, you're looking for a certain level of independence to say what you want to say. As I said before, that's something that we've been, preaching and been practicing since day one. But it's good to see other outlets, starting to catch up. And in many ways, hopefully, they'll continue to thrive far beyond, what, in terms of their audience, even beyond, what we do with Financial Juneteenth and also our different networks as well. But shout out to everyone. Shout out to Ann Kim for actually writing this story. The next article comes from, this is interesting. This came from Fortune magazine. And it states, former Facebook employees' new book exposes big tech's dirty secrets. And actually, this is related to the first article that I just went across, and also the next article as well, in regards to just media, being Black in media and journalism. So the novel is written by a man by the name of, I missed his name. Yeah, I can't find the brother's name. Oh, Mark Lucky. So he left Facebook in 2018. He worked at Facebook, Twitter, and maybe like a couple other tech companies. But I believe he did like PR and also worked on partnerships. But he wrote a novel, and it states, the novel Valley Girls tells the story through the lens of four main characters working in the communications department of tech firm Element, which Lucky said has elements of companies like Google, Uber, and Facebook. The story starts with optimism and gets progressively worse as the characters, all women, are put in increasingly compromising positions at work. Lucky said he wrote the book as fiction partly to protect his sources, many of whom had signed non-disclosure agreements with their employers. He has a quote in here, and Lucky states, this is very much a part of tech people don't see or hear about. When scandals arrive, they think the CEOs, or when scandals arrive, they think of CEOs and executives. They rarely think about the people crafting the message around it. Lucky, who has worked for companies including Facebook, Reddit, and Twitter in various roles that aid with influencer and media partnerships. During his time at the tech companies, he said he watched young, ambitious professionals, many of whom were women, join the communication teams, only to face situations in which they might have to hide company information or negotiate their way out of it, even if they ultimately disagreed with the company. So the article goes on to give a quick interview with Mark Lucky, but at the end of the article, he was asked a question: "What do you hope this book does for people who read it?" And Lucky answered, "This is about sharing the torch of knowledge, putting it into the hands of people, and letting them do what they want, whether it's to stay on the platform or not. For government and civil organizations, it's a guide to help them hold tech companies accountable. It's a guide for reporters and journalists to better understand the inner workings of the companies as well." So check this article out from Fortune Magazine. It will be in the link will be in the description of this YouTube video as well. The next article comes from the Daily Beast, and it is entitled, "I Experienced Systemic Racism at One of America's Most Prestigious Magazines." And the magazine they're talking about is Town and Country. The writer of the article is a woman by the name of Verneda Adele White. And she talks about her experience being a contractor at the magazine, handling live events in terms of scheduling guests and creating different types of panels, that type of thing. So the advancing conversations featured at the Affluent Heritage Brands annual event, Town and Country Philanthropy Summit, for example, have tackled issues from mass incarceration to police violence and have featured a who's who of Black powerhouses from Valerie Jarrett, Darren Walker, John Legend, and Ava DuVernay, to Michael B. Jordan, Robert Smith, and in the Exonerated Five and others. Behind the scenes, however, the company's offices and hiring practices, a very different story emerges, one that has all the hallmarks and deep-seated systemic racism and bias. So later on, she was just talking about what she saw during, after she was hired as a contractor. During this period, each time I became aware of newly filled positions at Town and Country, whether full-time or contractors, I observed the magazine had consistently hired a white candidate, frequently, but not exclusively, female and blonde, with few exceptions. When the magazine's publisher, Jennifer Levine Bruno, was in need of a new executive assistant, a blonde white woman was hired. A new senior marketing coordinator, a blonde white woman. A new brand marketing director, blonde white woman, and so on. And she tells the story. I'm not going to go deep into it, but basically she was up for a position that she was recommended by the person who was actually leaving the company. She applied. She was, trying to be proactive in terms of the hiring process. But in the end, of course, they went in another direction. They were very vague with their emails, but basically she didn't fit, what they were actually looking for. Who's to say if it's because she was, or a Black woman or whatever it may be. But there is a likelihood that was the case, or that she just didn't fit into the blonde white woman stereotype. And this gets to the crux of our argument in the entire article. She states, "Let's take a pause. The incident described here is not only about me being passed over without consideration and not getting the business. Instead, what it illustrates is something that many heritage media brands like Town and Company or Town and Country are now forced to reckon with. Systemic recruitment and procurement practices that routinely exclude or ignore qualified Black applicants while effectively prioritizing the maintenance of a homogenous, white-centric organizational culture. Too often, Black/African American candidates or suppliers are denied the opportunity to apply or to even submit a proposal for jobs. So yeah, I mean, I think this article, and I understand where this sister is coming from, but it shows the importance of vertical integration. But I know that takes a lot of time and capital to actually make happen. But the need for these Black-owned media platforms that we talked about that are declaring their independence from the Washington Monthly article, and the creation of our own ecosystems that hire very qualified individuals like this woman Vernada Adeli White as well. So these three articles have, like I said, the same theme in talking about just media and tech, and also corporate interests, and how they all combine and coalesce into a system that, like we always say, wasn't really built for us as Black people, but we have the experience to either change from the inside or completely build our own system as well. The next article comes from Forbes magazine, and it states Black women were among the fastest growing entrepreneurs. Then COVID arrived, and it's from Ruth Uma, and she writes about diversity and inclusion. But basically, the article started off by talking about one business who business was thriving as a Black woman, but of course, then COVID hit, and then her business went almost to zero. As the coronavirus threat escalated in early March, their sales declined, nearly hitting zero by April. That same month, Winter laid off almost every member of her 5-person team, save for one contract worker. Right now, we're treading water and have applied for 10 different grants with no success. It's a little daunting, but we're trying to carry the company on our backs. And I believe she was, I think it was a spa. I'm not exactly sure. I have to go back and check. Maybe that was the next business that was a spa. But no matter what the business is, many Black women are facing similar circumstances as well. For years, Black women have created new businesses at a rapid clip, far outpacing other racial and ethnic groups. But strong financial headwinds from the pandemic and a lack of access to new funding sources threaten to wipe out decades of economic progress, leaving Black female business owners in a state of perpetual uncertainty, waiting for relief that they fear will never come. And here's an interesting stat. Black women represent 42% of new women-owned businesses, 3 times their share of the female population, and 36% of all Black-owned employer businesses. But yeah, I think we should. Oh, Sundari Miller was a little later on in the article, but the article goes on to talk a lot more about just managing COVID and the lack of funding, and even the lack of getting PPP loans, so Paycheck Protection Program loans, and also EIDL or EIDL loans, the economic injury disaster loans that many Black companies were struggling to get as well. But check this article out from Forbes. I found it to be very interesting, and I think you'll get a lot of good information out of it. The last article that I want to cover today is from The Atlantic, and it states higher education should lead the efforts to reverse structural racism. Colleges and universities have a special role to play in making sure America's prosperity is accessible to all. And this article was written by Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, Peter Henderson, and Kathleen Tracy. I believe all of them are at the UMBC or have some type of affiliation with it, which is the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And I want to say it's either an HBCU or has a very, very large Black population. So someone in the comments can tell me if I'm right about that. But Dr. Hrabowski and others stated, We in this field have an obligation to engage in this work because we have become more essential than ever to our students' American dreams. We hold out to our students the promises of an enriched life and social mobility, and yet we often fall short in providing these to all who arrive on our campuses. There were some interesting quotes in here in terms of six-year graduation rates. Our institution, the University of Maryland at Baltimore County, has made enormous progress on the crisis in student success. In the 1980s, UMBC had a six-year graduation rate for all freshmen of just more than 30%. And for Black freshmen, the rate was 10 percentage points lower. So you're talking about in the 80s, 30% of people graduated. And for Black people, that was 20%. But through a range of interventions, we have increased our six-year graduation rate to 70% overall, not including the 10% who transfer and graduate elsewhere. Moreover, we have no Black-white graduation gap. So Black students and white students are performing at the same rate at the UMBC campus. Over the next decade, OUE implemented, okay, so this part of the article was talking about a few different things that they are implementing or they have implemented to help close that gap and to increase graduation rates. So this is the Office of Undergraduate Education. And what they did was implemented new programming for first-year students to increase retention, including a summer bridge program, a new student book experience, short courses on how to navigate college, writing instruction, first-year seminars, and other things as well. One of the other things that they talked about that they needed to do and that they did successfully beginning in 2003 was becoming more data warehouse and data centric and pulling together all information so they can get a complete picture of what a student's experience looked like. And the last thing that they talked about is that in the past decade, faculty have also focused on course redesign to improve teaching and learning. Redesigned introductory courses that emphasize active, problem-focused, and group-based work support student learning and success in classes that have traditionally been taught across the country as weed-out courses. So yeah, he gives a lot of very tangible things that they actually did and talks about just the problem in general. And Dr. Herbowski is one of the leaders in the education space. And if you're looking to see what higher education needs to do to serve Black students, then I highly recommend this article from The Atlantic as well. So that's about it. There's well, those are my top 5 articles or favorite articles as it relates to Black finance, wealth, and business for today. Please go ahead and give us a thumbs up and please shoot us a message and tell me what you think about the articles and the Financial Juneteenth segment in general. But before you get out of here, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And on behalf of Financial Juneteenth, my name is Lawrence Watkins. Take care, be blessed, and talk to you later. Bye-bye. Today's video is brought to you by the Black Business School. At the Black Business School, we don't help you just climb the corporate ladder, we help you build your own as well. We provide a culturally relevant yet practical education in all things wealth building at an affordable price. So no matter if you want additional freedom in your day-to-day life, you would like to leave a legacy of generational wealth behind to your family and friends, or you just want additional security and stability going into your golden years of retirement, the Black Business School has courses and offerings for you. So head over to theblackbusinessschool.com to learn more. Take care and see you in class soon. Bye-bye.
Which means knowledge was available to him. He says, I also reject them. So, I think that's the biggest thing for me is to not reject the knowledge of finances. When I started the idea of, and that's when you and I first met, when I started the idea of the biblical principles of finance, I started it targeted at churches with people that looked like us. And then I found out very quickly that churches where people looked like us were not about me talking to their people about this is what you got to do. This is how wise you got to be with money. Let's be smart about how you deal with your money. Let's be tactical about how you invest. Be tactical about how you spend. A lot of the large churches that I met with here locally on the West Coast were about the pastors here and everybody else is here. It's a great disservice. And so, I had the idea of, well, why don't I just create an avenue where I can go talk to people day to day about how you should be spending money, how you should be doing, what money is and what it isn't.